this. So thank you for coming. It's an honor to be able to share your story on what happened down in Colombia and in captivity. So I appreciate you being there.
I appreciate you and what you do for the community. And that's why I'm here. Not to see my face on a show anywhere or promote anything. It's what you do for the community. And I told you, some of my friends, and we brought you a couple little trinkets, right, that said, hey, and one of the text messages from a ranger to you, just say thanks for what you do. Just don't stop. And so, when I got the invite, any effort to support this, I'm all about it.
That means a lot.
Well deserved, sir.
That means a hell of a lot. So everybody starts off with an introduction here. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Keith Stansell, former United States Marine and Northrop Grumman contractor who flew anti-drug surveillance missions in Colombia, is part of Plan Colombia to intercept FARC communications and support counter-narcotic efforts. Survivor of one of the longest hostage ordeals in modern history, enduring 1,967 days of captivity in the Colombian jungle after your plane crashed in FARC-controlled territory. Co-author of the book Out of Captivity, Surviving 1,967 Days in the Colombian Jungle. Two-time air crash survivor, received the Secretary of Defense Medal of Defense of Freedom in 2009. Dedicated husband to Rebecca, father to your daughter Lauren, son Kyle, and twin sons Keith Jr. and Nick, who were born after your capture and whom you first held upon your return home. And most importantly, you're a Christian.
Thank you, sir.
So, a couple of things to knock out here. Actually, real quick. So you had twins.
Yes.
How'd you decide which one's Keith Jr.?
You know what? I didn't. Their mother named them while I was in captivity. They were born while I was in captivity. I didn't see them till they were 5 years old when I got rescued. So their mother being Latin, the joke was, I just thought, what are they going to be named? Then when I saw Nicholas and Keith, and it wasn't something, some crazy Wancho or something, it's a funny deal. And when I was in captivity, we heard on the radio what their names were. A Colombian major is a buddy of mine that spent 10 years in captivity. He goes, you got lucky. She named them Keith and Nick. Yeah.
Damn. Well, we'll get into more of that. We'll definitely get into more of that. So a couple things to knock out real quick. I've got a Patreon account. It's a community that we've built since the beginning. They're the reason that I get to be here with you today.
Right.
And so one of the things that I offer them is they get the opportunity to ask each and every guest a question. This is a good one. It's from Jesse Martin. After years of freedom and time to heal emotionally and physically, if you could go back in time to any specific moment when you were in captivity to share a message with yourself, what moment would you go back to and what would your message be?
Wow, that's a really good question.
It is a good question.
What would my message to myself be? If I knew that I was getting the message from the future, this too will pass. That would have been it. I learned one thing in captivity. We're bred, whether we like it or not, as human beings to survive. It's the way we were created. We don't have a choice. I think the survival instinct is stronger in some than others, but we don't have a choice. So one thing that the three of us always said to each other, my co-patriots there, Marc and Tom, that were captured with me, was, we're going home one day. And I used to tell Marc, I'd rather die on a tarmac, after a rescue in the United States than die here in this jungle. I just wanted to get back home one day. Obviously, you want to see your family, and that's what really gives you the strength to keep going, those ties and all. But for me, I wasn't dying on foreign soil. That was my biggest fear.
Damn. It's a good answer. It's a damn good answer. And then to continue on, a lot lighter here. Everybody gets a gift.
Uh-oh. Oh, wow.
Those are
sweet
Vigilance League gummy bears, legal in all 50 states. It's just candy.
Awesome.
Just candy. At least they're legal right now.
So they're not from Colorado.
They're from Michigan.
Fantastic. No, thank you very much. Thank you.
But Keith, so I want to do a life story on you. I mean, obviously we're really going to focus in on Colombia and captivity and what you were doing down there, how you got captured, all that stuff. But I always like to start with, where did you grow up?
I grew up in a place called Green Meadows, Florida, US 27 and Griffin Road in Broward County, right next to the Everglades. My father was a director of a vocational education center. My mother was a guidance counselor at school. And Green Meadows was one of those first developments where people had horses. So you had like 1.5 acres or 2.5 acres in a middle-class ranch home. And my father made a good living, my mom, but we were kind of upper middle class. We weren't well-to-do, but spent a lot of time, when I say traveling, we had a camper. So my parents would always take a couple trips to camp somewhere, summertime, do those things. So really up until I was 14, it was Mayberry for me. I was a nerd, big buck teeth, wasn't very athletic, got picked on a lot, but had good friends. But liked to fish and camp out around my house all the time. And it was just a great place to live. And I remember my mother had a dinner bell in front of the house. It was an old train station bell that my dad had put on a 4x4 post. Back then, obviously, nobody had, social media, and you weren't stuck inside. There was 3 channels on the TV. You get home from school and you pop smoke and you're outside. So the rule was, we don't care where you're at, but you better be able to hear that bell. Because my mom would cook dinner and she'd go outside and ring the bell, right? And ding, ding, we get tuned in and we'd, haul ass back to the house. So it was fantastic. And the only thing that sucked is my friends on the weekend, if we're out somewhere they couldn't find me, they'd ring the damn bell. You come home back, like something, And so I have really fond memories. Everybody in their life has tragedies, right? So mine, the earliest on was at 14. My mother came down with lung cancer, and she was gone in 6 weeks.
In 6 weeks?
6 weeks, yeah, in 6 weeks. So that started a period of instability in my life. Really, I was very angry at the world. And I had just started school at a military academy in Melbourne, Florida, called Florida Air Academy. I was going to go into their flight school program there with Embry-Riddle. And my plan was to go into the military as a pilot. But after her passing, I ended up in 5 high schools in 4 years. And it was a lot of, being unstable. My father was an old school Depression era kid. He wasn't Mr. Lovey-dovey, hey, I love you, yada, yada, just a serious guy, good provider. But all of a sudden he had 2 sons, right? That wasn't really his group. He was the provider and he taught us many things, but my mom was the caretaker of everything. So I moved around to a couple different high schools with family members, and, it really hurt my feelings leaving Florida Air Academy because I already had this plan mapped out. And it changed everything. And for my father, too. I remember my father, he picks me up one day from school. And my school principal had worked for my father. My dad hired him. And this was a few months after my mom had died, and my father was drunk. And my father was a normal cocktail in the afternoon, but I'd never seen him get in a car and drive drunk. And I remember we're listening to George Jones, and he's in the seat. And he's pointing at the radio, and she's gone. I was so brokenhearted for my father. That's the first time I'd ever seen him cry, the first time I'd ever seen him weak, And, we just drove home, and I remember he just went in, sat down in his recliner, and went to sleep. But I'd never seen any behavior, nor did I see it again. But I was worried. He'd had a few drinks and picked me up, which he would never do. And you could just see he was destroyed, and it marked me for a long time. And we had our rough times too. You're a teenage boy, you're coming into puberty, I was never good with authority. The older I got, that didn't get any better. But that's the first tragic time in my life as a memory that I think would shape me the way I look at things forever. And so I would say from then on until maybe, in my 20s, even though I was in the military, I was bitter from that inside. I didn't realize it until really didn't realize how much it affected me until captivity. But my mom was the stabilizer in the family, right? And it put me on an unstable path. Now, I wasn't robbing banks or, in police cars or anything. I was just an angry kid. And I remember my dad's upset with me because I had been taken out of school and put in a place called Nova University, an adult college. I academically was very gifted. But I said, I just don't want to go to class or do anything anymore. And I think my salvation, and I hope he's still alive. One day I'm a senior at school, American Senior High School in Miami, Florida, and Sergeant Armando Yearwood walks into our classroom as a recruiter. And he started giving us the Marine Corps pitch. And I asked him, what are they going to do for me? He said, we're not doing shit for you. What are you going to do for me? Very straightforward guy. I was like, delayed enlistment right there. We got to go talk to my dad. I was 17. I signed a year delayed enlistment until I graduated high school. And that was one of the best decisions I made in my life. And I, by far, was no star Marine. Imagine you go in the Marine Corps and you don't like authority. It's just like, maybe not so well thought out. But the Marine Corps set me on a different path. And like someone who works for you, who went in the Marine Corps at 17 years old and then became an officer, enlisted guy first, I went in Parris Island at 17, and my drill instructors gave me a really nice birthday gift at 18 at Parris Island, which was about an hour workout on the quarterdeck till I puked. But even though I was not some star Marine, I was good at my job in the Marine Corps. It turned me to a path that would really help me in the long run and guide me. And everything I have today, surviving captivity, where I ended up, maybe working outside of my pay grade, is because I went to Parris Island at 17 years old. I got the Marine Corps to thank for everything on that.
What did you do in the Marine Corps?
So I was an avionics guy, aircraft electrician, aircraft avionics. In the Marine Corps, when we went there, you do ICT, infantry combat training, no matter what you do, if you're in the wing or not. So went through there, then I went to Millington, Tennessee to my aviation basic course and started off in Cherry Point, North Carolina. And I was working on aircraft there. Then I got sent into the OB-10 Bronco world and was out in Oceanside, California for a few months before I finally got stationed at Marine Corps Air Station New River. So I was at VMO-1, Marine Observation Squadron 1. And the OB-10, for the people that don't know, is just a twin-engine Ford air control bird. The rear seater is usually a lieutenant out of the grunts, an infantry officer, and the front seat, not even a pilot, and the front seater is a naval aviator up front. And that mission went away, but that mission of working and the association with OB-10 is what would lead me to the counter-drug operations in Colombia years later. So I got out after 4 years, and a little bitter again because I was going to re-enlist. And we had a thing called MECEP, Marine Commissioning Enlisted Program. Basically, you apply to MECEP if you can get, approved. You'll get tuition, you go to school, you can get your commission, and then we'll owe them 6 years of your life afterwards. That was my plan. But then we had legislation that came down, Grand Rubman. There was no promotion, no bonus, no anything. And I was like, well, why am I staying here? Right? It wasn't the Marine Corps' fault. It was, DC legislation at the time. But one thing that marked me was one day I was in the hangar and I was just coming in from the flight line. And there's this lieutenant standing there that had gone to Florida Air Academy with me. And he sees me, and his call sign was Bones, but that was his nickname in school, tall and thin. He said, he goes, Stansell, what are you doing? I said, hey, sir. He goes, what's up with this sir shit? I just have my T-shirt on. I go, what are you doing? He was there. He was, I think he was flying Harriers. And he goes, you flying Broncos? I'm like, no, Bones, I'm not. I'm a Lance Corporal. This is about getting busted back to PFC if I don't get my shit squared away. But it really stung me that time of instability after my mom's death, what I had not taken advantage of.
Damn.
Yeah. I wasn't embarrassed at all. Nothing like that. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I ended up going into the Georgia National Guard full time for 9 years. And that was an experience. The Guard is an adventure, to say the least. But learned a lot there about a lot of stuff, in the sense that not necessarily military, but there's that transition in the Guard. It's all, very nepotistic. The full-time Guard is an interesting deal. It is, in the military, we get transferred out, right? Every 2-3 years, somewhere active duty, you're moving, a different change of people, change of command. Well, at a Guard facility there, it's nobody ever leaves. You're there full time.
Yeah.
So, and I was in a transition in the Guard time when it went from no real mission to all of a sudden active duty Army started tasking you with missions. And so you got your summer camp every year. You bring in the part-timers and go out in the field and do all that stuff. But I'll never forget, I'm in the Guard just a few months. We go to Fort Stewart, get all the part-time people in there, and we got 2 weeks out in the field and everything. And my first sergeant said, "Hey, Stansell, do me a favor." He said, "Take this Jeep here." And remember the old Jeeps with little flat trailers, little small trailers?
Yeah.
He said, "Go to the PX and load this fucker with beer." I'm like, okay. So it was a bunch of rednecks flying CH-54 Sky Crane helicopters and doing a damn good job of it now, right? Moving stuff for the Army, but they're at Fort Stewart. And then there's a big tent, and we're watching movies and drinking beer, and all the movies were not exactly PG rated in the woods. So some of my buddies in the Marine Corps like, "What's the Guard like?" I said, "It's a little bit different." It's a little bit different. But that ended shortly because we ended up getting Chinooks, getting new aircraft, and then the standards, I would say, picked up. And there was a change from kind of the old Guard to the new Guard, a much higher level of professionalism and people coming off active duty, joining that were, kind of tier 1 folks.
Yeah.
So it was a totally different Guard, and I got to see the transition, but interesting.
Did you, I mean, in your days of the military, did you ever, and being in captivity, did you ever go to SEER training by chance?
So the Guard had this thing I call SEER Light. The Army would send trainers around and give you your training, but nothing like going to brag and completing the course. I'd get a course later on in Columbia, but yeah. And it was, it was interesting to me that when I started working downrange, all this time in uniform, training, all the stuff that we did, and I was an aviation guy, right? But I would never see any hard stuff or hear gunshots until I was a civilian on the dark side. I always laughed at that, And what got me from the Guard to the State Department was when I was in the Marine Corps, there was a program called Nimbus. And it was a drug interdiction mission run out of Homestead Air Force Base when it was still Homestead Air Force Base. And they used our OB-10s to support U.S. Customs and DEA on takedowns. So I got sent down there. It was just a small debt to support stuff. And that's really where my counter-narcotics connection started. And the customs guys had a couple jets down there. They had no FLIR operator. So kind of undercover darkness, I'm flying, doing the FLIR with them. And then our OB-10s are down there. And, we were doing some cool stuff. And that later on lead me to getting recruited by the State Department on an OB-10 spray program.
You got recruited?
Yeah, I had a friend of mine in the State Department. They were looking for OB-10 Bronco guys. There's not many of us, right? And so they were at a Patrick Air Force Base, and they ran the spray program in Colombia. And then there was another interdiction program going on. And so he said, "Hey, you're an OB-10 guy. You want a rear seat for us?" And I was brought on to be in a really small group of about 15 people to do interdiction and, just get in at night and chase guys. And, it was going to be a blast. So I signed the paperwork and came on. But in the middle of that, got shut down. And so my boss from the State Department calls me in. It was DynCorp was that contract. And he said, "Hey, Keith, how about you go to Colombia and rear seat OB-10s in Colombia for me?" And I was like, okay. I'll do it. So then I wind up downrange in Colombia, and we're spraying spraying coca with OB-10s that were, had spray booms on them and tanks inside. And I was running the SAR bird in the back, which was basically an OB-10 that had no spray equipment on it, but still had the FLIR system. So with the spray package, I'd be behind and overhead with my pilot. Then you have a SAR package. There's a couple Super Hueys and some ex-folks like you that were riding in case somebody went down. You had to, take the penetrator down and get them out of the jungle. Then our spray package, it'd be anywhere from 3 to 6 birds. And we'd spray coca.
Sprayed them with what?
Roundup.
You're just killing
Basically Roundup.
cocaine.
Yeah. And when I first started, it was as far as you could see.
No shit.
It was as far as you could see, yeah. Once you got over the rocks, down in the Andes down south, it was just coca everywhere. And what they did to counter that was they broke up the big coca fields into small coca fields. The big fields, we just come across with 3, 4, 5, 6 birds and just make a long spray run. It was a lot easier. But that again, politics, we'd be spraying and doing a good job. And we knew if our job that we were doing was too good, shut the program down. Something happened, we'd have to stop spraying because it was having too much effect. So
Too much effect on what?
on the coca. You're stepping on toes there, man. I mean, that's the thing. You think everybody up in the government there and La Casa de Niño, on the, that's the White House. Do you think that that's not influenced by the coca trade and the money that's there? And then the politics. So one of the spray pilots that I knew used to say, is it yucca in a coca field or is it coca in a yucca field? So they would always put on the news, this poor campesino, his yucca was sprayed. That's bullshit. The campesino was paid by the guerrilla to go plant some yucca plants in the coca field and pretend like that was his food source, and it wasn't.
Wow.
And it wasn't. So at every circle and turn, we were being stopped from being effective. But I flew with a great group of guys. Everybody from the maintenance people, the pilots, were just fantastic. And,
What was special about the OB-10?
There was a forward air control bird. So it was heavily armored, reasonably heavily armored, super maneuverable, and just a really capable aircraft. And I think because it was free also, with the State Department, be able to hand that off down there and run it. But it was very effective at the mission. I mean, you want to fly a single engine crop duster with almost no armor spraying something, or do you want a high performance twin engine turboprop that's got armor on it, right? What's the survivability?
Yeah.
That was the deal. And we actually sprayed coke on MBGs. Didn't work very well because the OV-10 at the time was not MBG compatible. So you're going across at night, across a coca field, you just see streaks of light, just attracted small arms fire.
So did you guys take a lot of fire?
Yeah. But when I say take a lot of fire, mostly small arms, AK, stuff like that. There's always a bullet hole here or there, whatever. A couple aircraft we lost, but they weren't OB-10s. I see the Air Force now with this air tractor, single engine air tractor. They've got it armored up and it's like going to be a close air support. I'm like, man, you're dead in that thing. I don't know who wanted to waste that money, but that thing it better be total air superiority, because anybody in a contested environment, that aircraft is not survivable. I don't believe it is. I've seen them down with an AK-47. Now, it didn't have all this armor, but it's slow and it's got one motor on it. And one of my Air Force buddies and I, he retired. We're talking about that the other day. He's a retired F-15 pilot. And he's like, I wouldn't fly that thing in a contested environment anywhere. But OV-10 was a great bird. I really enjoyed it. A lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to be able to rear seat that aircraft. And it was a really good experience.
What was the op tempo like down there?
Depend upon the spraying. It would go through cycles. And so if we were on kind of a hard new spray time, just every day, the rotation down there, 2 to 3 weeks on, 10 days off, you're spraying every single day. But then politics would shut it down or speed it up. And, we did other things too. I got a mission one time. It was kind of interesting to support some Colombians. There was a lot of fun. And we went out, basically we're using our systems to locate, targets for them at the time, just to record, not to actually attack at that second. So you got to see some other stuff, right? But we had some aircraft down there that were just doing mapping. We'd map coca fields. Everything would be geolocated, then we'd come back, and that would help us direct the spray on them.
Interesting.
So interesting program. I think my experience with the drug enforcement down there, just take the gloves off. Take the gloves off, and if we're going to fight it, let's fight it. But you can't fight with one hand tied behind your back.
Sounds like every war I've been involved in.
Yeah.
Every single one of them.
Every one. And, half of our pilots weren't military pilots. I remember I used to be MBG qualified to repair goggles and stuff, right? So I'm in the hangar at Patrick Air Force Base in the State Department, and my boss comes down. He's like, "Hey, Keith," he goes, "What, you want to train some pilots tonight?" I figure I was just going to give an assimilation class, right? Just hands-on. And so I knew they were crop dusters. These guys were from Louisiana. So sun's going down. I go upstairs in the hangar. They're there. And I'm like, "Hey, what'd you fly in the military?" Like, "Military? We've never been in the military." What do you mean? Right. So the three guys that were there were fantastic pilots. Now, I'm not knocking, but I thought I'd go upstairs and, you flew an A-10 or, I thought that was what was there, and it wasn't. And so we're out there outside of Patrick at night practicing. They were low level on MBGs, kind of do it yourself thing. I was like, damn, this had never happened on active duty.
Yeah.
But the guys were really good. But I used to mess with one of the lead pilots there. He'd say, "What can a military pilot do at 100, 120 feet that I can't do?" And I said, "Well, you're running 90 knots. He's running 400. That's what he can do." So there was always a friendly back and forth. And we brought in some experienced ex-military guys, fixed wing guys. And it all worked out. It worked out. It was a group of Americans down there that, although they were contracting, and you saw this in your life after, you got out, they still want to do the job.
Yep.
Everybody there wanted to do the job. I didn't fly with a pilot or work with anybody there that didn't want to do the job.
Man, that sounds like such a cool mission.
I
did not realize this was State Department mission.
Yeah.
I thought this was an agency mission.
No. State Department. It was run out of Patrick.
No shit.
Yeah.
Where were you guys staged out of?
LaRondia was one of our, San Jose and LaRondia were two of our bases that we were staged out of. And, we had some air tractors there and OB-10s and a mix of mechs from all different services and pilots and people that do a job and do a good job. It was all patriots, right? And, Dying Corps used to get a bad rap about, you got a bunch of ex-enlisted beer drinking guys down there partying all over Latin America and doing a counter drug mission. Well, yeah, that's what you attract.
Yep.
You're not looking for choir boys because you're not getting them.
I've had this conversation so many times.
But those same guys will do a kick-ass job, and they did.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you guys, was it specifically Colombia? Were you going into Peru?
Oh, no, there was Colombia. When I was on that was all. We never left Colombia. That would not start until I got on with SALCOM reconnaissance systems. Then it was a different mission. But I mean, even sometimes I know you must have been in places where you're like, man, this sucks. But if you think about it now, there were some lessons there you were learning, didn't realize, And I've got some great memories of some really good people there. I've got some really sad memories of one of our guys getting killed by accident with a minigun on by his own best friend there on the base, which was really, really sad. We had he wasn't an Indian. I can't remember if he was from Ecuador. I think he was Ecuadorian. He was one of Huey Mechanics, great guy. And one of his buddies was a retired Marine E-7, and they were armors, or the one E-7 was an armor. And so at San Jose, we had a little pad, and we had the aircraft there, and that minigun, I don't care what it is, if you just turn those barrels, if there's something in there, it's going off, right? So they were best buds, so the Ecuadorian was standing right in front of the minigun. and his buddy just turned. We all heard boom, ran outside, and bullet went in under his right armpit. As I remember, it came out here, just dropped dead like a stone. You know, and it was sad, really sad, because it was an accident, and it would become a whole legal thing afterwards. And but two really close friends, and the American, who was a former Marine there, he was stuck on base for months until he cleared it. It wasn't on purpose, right? You know, I felt so terrible for him, you know, because he was just crushed. I mean, crushed. So, you know, it was a reminder, this isn't a joke. You know, these SAR birds, and, you know, they get it on sometimes. There'd be somebody shooting at them and then just giving the guys in SAR aircraft a chance to get some rust off the miniguns. But, yeah, it was just a sad, sad event.
Damn.
You know, I mean, for base security, we had seen old yellow tugs on a flight line. You've seen them a million times, right? And we had to come up with a base security plan. So we got a portable power generator that we used to start aircraft with, hooked it to the tug, then got a seat off of a bass boat and welded a minigun mount on it. So we had power for the minigun and put ammo racks on the side, and when we passed the base security plan for that.
Did you guys, was there a lot of engagements?
No, not really.
No? Any?
When I would say engagements, it would usually be the gunships. If there was reported fire on a pass, they would dive down to engage, but who could you see? One or two guerrillas in the side of a jungle in the coca field? So full-on head-to-head combat? No. They didn't want that. Those guys in those helicopters were looking for that. You know, they took it very serious to protect the package.
Yeah.
So you come back, you didn't even know you got hit sometimes. You know, there'd be one or two or three holes in the aircraft, but there was no full-up, you know, Wild West gunfights with that.
Let's go into, I want you to educate the audience on who the FARC is.
Okay. Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarios de Colombia. Fuerzas is forces, Armed Revolutionary Forces of Colombia. So the FARC manifested itself in 1964, same year I was born, and led by a guy, a campesino called Tito Fio, which is fixed bullet or fixed shot. And in the late 50s and early 60s, when the whole communist plague was taking over Latin America, they were basically a derivative of that. And you have to think about Colombia as two different countries at that time. Mm-hmm. You've got Bogota at 8,800 feet, where the wealthy and the political class lived. Then you had the rest of the country at sea level. No real infrastructure in the country to get and drive a truck here or there, mostly dirt. I'm painting 1964, right? So you had basically a campesino kind of working class, as they called it. You know, maybe the proletariat want to pronounce it that way, against the elite class that had the money, right? But then they also owned all the big ranches and property in the countryside. So the FARC came about as a way to maybe, or I would give them legitimacy there, to fight the political class and the elites for some fairness in the country. Definitely a class system, right? No doubt about it. But over the years, what infiltrated the FARC was the drug trade. So they became, I would say, I hate to use the word victims, but their revolution, you know, like any communist revolution is all a bunch of bullshit, right? You trade one ruling class for another, right? Mm-hmm. And it really, in the late 70s, when the cocaine trade started, and that became the big money, then it became just a cover for the largest cocaine trafficking network in the world. And that's all the FARC's about. It's all now that kid you've brainwashed is a 14-year-old campesino to become a guerrilla. He believes in the revolution. But there's an interesting thing. When I got rescued in 2008, I saw a newspaper article that came out, and it showed the FARC leadership called the Secretariat, right? This was the brain trust, right? Where all their children were. their kids weren't in the jungle. They were at universities in Europe and in Florida. I mean, and you got these guys that are ultra wealthy and running this big cocaine trade. And so you had the secretariat, then you had the commandantes, and you have different fronts, right, around the country that were divvied up. And so it just manifested itself into a type of cancer, I think. And what was once a revolution that I think they actually believed in. Now, from a certain level below, those worker bees believed in the revolution. But the ones up top, I mean, they were just corrupted with their own money.
Yeah.
My belief. I think many people support that.
Is the FARC still active?
Yes. This is what's sad. So, let me see, 8 years ago, we had a peace process. No, 9 years ago. So President Uribe, who was a hardline right-wing guy, basically brought the FARC to their knees. Then the president that followed him decided to have a peace process, which they'd failed before. So we take the leadership to Cuba. They get fanfare. Some of our major politicians go down there, and they negotiated a peace process. And I don't know what the number was, maybe 20,000 or so. They turned in their arms and they came out of the jungle. All right. But they really didn't do that. Some groups stayed and refused to turn themselves in. The FARC were promised 6 seats, I think. Now I can be off on this number, in the Colombian Congress, called a curul. So you take these guys out, you forgive them of crimes against humanity, then you put them in the Congress.
Wow.
And, this whole peace deal was...
When was this?
Gosh, FARC peace deal. This would be 10 years ago, 14 and 15, I think. So I'll never forget, Kerry's going to go down there and talk to him, and other people are going to talk to him. And I just saw our politicians going, man, you guys know nothing about these guys. And this, it's just kind of like the Taliban being a B team, right? And I was up in D.C. and I did an interview, and I can't remember if it was on CNN or Fox, but one of our senators, very famous, and he's deceased now and was a POW from Arizona. I don't want to disparage him, but he was making comments about the FARC and the peace deal, and I was on CNN, and I shot back at him and said, hey, would you like to debate this? Or could I at least talk to you? I don't know who's briefing you. And he wouldn't do a debate with me or even anything. CNN tried to get us to do it together. But the thing was, he was so far out of base and some of the things that Kerry said, I was like, who are you talking to? What's going on? And so it was disappointing to see that peace process. People that should be in jail for life at a minimum get forgiven, but I get it was for a greater good. Well, now what they call the dissidents fled back to the jungle and restarted the FARC. But now they're splintered. So they're not as powerful as they once were, but they're still there. And now we have an ultra-liberal government that believes in this talk stuff, right? And it just buys them time. And so the FARC dissidency is what they call it, has grown. And you can look up a guy named Mordisco right now is one of them. He's in leadership. They're backed by popular demand, And so it's just a cycle. I think the peace process gave a lot of FARC members a chance to escape the jungle, some of the young people. But in my capture, there's a guy, we all had nicknames, right? But he was a guy who had us in the jungle personally for longest. His name was Gonsalves. So when we got captured and he was captured, our government tried to extradite him, but the Colombian government wouldn't play ball. So Gonsalves was put into jail. He was released under the peace process. And the liberal president down there now wanted to make him a special envoy to the FARC dissidents, right? What did he do? He just went back and kidnapped the Colombian congresswoman. He just went back to his old tricks. He was just on the news a few months ago. And it was sickening to me to see this guy that was in handcuffs, right, next to the helicopter after our rescue, sitting up like this to a female congresswoman saying, don't come back here again. just released. And now he's, el secuestro. He's kidnapping people again. What he should have had was a fucking bullet between his eyes.
This shit happens all the time. But look at all the people we've released from Gitmo.
These are not good people. I worked at Northrop Grumman with an interesting character. Former 82nd Airborne, 1-star Harry Axon. God rest his soul. He's buried in Arlington right now. And he made a comment because he was asking me about some of the leadership down there, and he was our corporate lead up there for SOCOM. And I had a picture of him when he went into Panama. He was sitting behind Noriega's desk holding his sword. And I said, Harry, like, what's your opinion? And he just looked at me and said, Keith, unfortunately, some people just need killing. And it wasn't animosity, it wasn't with anger, but he was just like, these people are just going to do what they're going to do, right? I mean, so what do we do? I mean, I guess on the right of being human and humane, you want to maybe give them the benefit of the doubt or whatever it is, right? But some people are just murderers, man. And that's just, they're never going to change. And we have this way of always hoping to negotiate with the unnegotiable.
Yeah. Never seemed to learn a lesson.
I don't understand it.
How many people were involved in the FARC at the time? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. We've heard different numbers, right? I think they were probably maybe more than 30,000 strong at the height. So there's a very famous takedown of a post called Me Too. So the Colombian police and soldiers that were in captivity with us, the majority of them were taken from Me Too. Way down south, there was no way for the Colombian military to really get down there. And they were much weaker. This is before Plan Colombia, right? They were much weaker then. So a few thousand FARC surround an outpost, man, and just start killing and capture them. And at one time in the Despeje, right, in the Despeje, the FARC had over 400 police and soldiers in captivity.
Are you serious?
400. Now imagine this. Imagine this. Let's just say in this county in Tennessee, you had 400 American men and women in captivity because you were some security force, and the government or the state of Tennessee had given it a Despeje, like, it was much bigger than this. I think it was the size of Rhode Island. And on the night, American families have to see their own kids and grown men behind fences in their own country as they negotiate. And then we have American CEOs and business people wanting to do business with the FARC and flying down there and visiting them. And they just gave them their own state. So what do? They just use that to grow stronger. Then they let the few hundred go of the soldiers and police, and they kept the officers and the politicians that they captured.
Damn.
So they always wanted el intercambio humanitario. That's the humanitarian exchange. We want all the FARC you have in prisons for our people. And that's what, as Tom, we got captured, always said. So we're just hanging meat. And so they always wanted a Despeje to have another humanitarian exchange. But they were now a named terrorist organization. So what was the strategy? You got to declare us a legitimate military force. Then you have to openly negotiate with us and a Despeje, and then we'll exchange prisoners. They were never exchanging anybody. We were just political currency. Just political currency. And I remember Rumsfeld, I heard it on the radio. They were talking about the 3 American hostages. And it was a news thing, and it was a press conference. And Rumsfeld, our secretary at the time, was just holding it, right? And our subject came up because we don't negotiate next. I was like, damn, today sucks, right? Did I want them to negotiate for us and trade us out? Yeah, of course I did. Who doesn't want to go home? But I knew that's a fantasy. And if you negotiate and you trade for me, then who's next after Keith or Tom or Marc? That's what's going to happen. If you can leverage them. And so, all we wanted, and we stated in our first proof of life, we wanted to be rescued, but I wanted our guys coming to rescue us, not the Colombians. And I remember, because the whole plan was during a rescue op, the first time they hear the helos, there's a disembark, they did it.
Yeah.
In the first Colombian rescue operation, how sad is this? You had a group of political prisoners. I think there was 20 or so of them basically in a cage in the jungle, hidden in the jungle. So the Colombian military flies over the camp. You could see the boots hanging outside the Blackhawks. Then they fucking disembark like a mile away in the jungle. What happens? They just walk in there and they kill every single one of them. Not only does the FARC execute them and haul ass, then they send a guy back to shoot everybody in the head again. One of those guys survived. He was you could call him like a state legislator, wasn't a national. And he survived by hiding under the dead bodies of his friends.
Shit.
And he told the story. So do you want to rescue from that group?
You heard that while you were in captivity, that stuff?
It happened, yeah.
Shit.
And what they were a group of municipal legislators. The FARC dressed up like police, drive into a little town, right? Run into the little courthouse where they're having them and say, hey, outside, you're at risk. Get them on a school bus, start driving out the countryside and say, oh, by the way, we're not police, we're FARC. How about that?
Damn. Well, Keith, let's take a quick break.
Yeah.
When we come back, I want to talk as descriptive as you can about the night you went down.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll go through the next 5 years.
And I will say one thing. They did come in to execute us one night, but the order got pulled off and we were this close. I mean, they were right there.
Holy shit. We'll get into that.
It went from terror to anger. It was so deep into it. And, I mean, if you want to say it now before we break real quick or not.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, being a crew chief for a long time, writing Chinooks and cranes, whatever, I could just feel a helicopter from a long way. You get used to it, right? Everybody's like that. So the biggest fear we had, and this would affect me in freedom afterwards, but the biggest fear we had was a disembark at night that wasn't done right. So Condoleezza Rice, when she was Secretary of State, was visiting Colombia. And she made a very poignant statement. It was on the radio. Plan Colombia, we're going to have government presence everywhere. And she was right. That's what they needed. She's 100% correct. But while they were down there, we noticed a lot of air activity, but it'd be way off. So we just figured it was just more aircraft mobilizing people. So one night, we hear these two Blackhawks. Then it breaks into one, and it starts circling the camp. But a giant circle. We did not know, would not find out until later, that they didn't have our camp spotted. So there's a couple hundred guerrillas guarding our camp because we had Colombian police and military on one side of the fence and then the politicians and us, the Colombian politicians and the three of us. So they come to the gate to kill us. And they bring the guards. Every guard has one person assigned they're responsible to kill. So there's just pandemonium in our compound. And Marc, actually, we had a little escape route plan. Marc was actually, he slipped out under the fence. And everybody's screaming. I sat down because we're in a box like this. And I said, man, they're just going to whack us. And there was a Colombian congressman with him. We had a nickname. We called him Big Cat, whatever. Anyway. So I was terrified. I'm like, they're just going to shoot the fuck out of us. And I heard the guards talking. Man, is this real? Is this real? The guards were nervous because they knew they were going to shoot us. And so I went from being terrified, but when I say terrified, I mean, I didn't crap in my pants when I was close, to I got angry. And I don't know why. It was not a macho decision, Sean. I'm not saying I was a badass, nothing like that. I got fucking pissed because I felt like I was laying there like a rat. And I got up and I walked to the gate, and Fernay, who was the evil boss of the guards, I said, "You gonna fucking kill us? You gonna kill us?" I said, "Motherfucker, shoot me like a man." And the congressman, Big Cat, grabbed me. He said, "Keith, don't say that. Don't say that." I mean, it's total chaos. I said, "You shoot me like a fucking man." And I don't know why I said it. It wasn't like I was being a badass, Sean, or whatever, but I just went from terror, absolute terror, to just anger. If I could have got my hands on them, I mean, And then the radio goes off and they shut it down. And the Black Hawk went away. But we were this close. Wow. And Fernay had his radio on, and they're waiting. They're talking back and forth because the macho commandante, who is escaping right now, is talking to him on the radio whether or not to give him the order to kill all of us, because we were the HVT of hostages. I was terrified, man, terrified. And then I just got angry, and I don't know. I wish I could tell you why. There's no training, no macho, no thing. I was just furious that you were going to kill me.
How long after you were in there did this happen?
A year and a half. Yeah, a little over a year and a half.
What happened to your buddy that slipped through the fence?
His ass finally got back in under Marc. I said, "Man, you almost fucked up." Marc just hung by we didn't know what to do, right? And he slipped back in, tore his t-shirt or whatever. I was like, I talk about it now.
Damn.
Yeah.
Keith, let's take a quick break.
Yes, sir.
The most important action you can take today is to help protect your family's future from cyber criminals and online predators. And Bunker, that's BUNKR, can help you do just that. Bunker was developed by experts with 25 years of experience catching criminals and fighting cybercrime. They created Bunker to help protect their own families, and now they're sharing it with you. Bunker even offers a family plan. With the family plan, you get a private messenger to share messages, photos, and files with your spouse and children, connecting only with people you approve. No spam, no surveillance, no imposters, ever. You also get a password manager to help safeguard your family's online accounts, including financial, shopping, streaming, and social media. You even get a vault to help securely store important documents like photos, IDs, birth certificates, and passports. Visit their website, bunker.life/SRS, and use code SRS for 25% off your family plan today. That's bunkr.life/SRS and use code SRS for 25% off your family plan today. That's bunkr.life/SRS and use code SRS for 25% off your family plan today. Here's the thing. The people who listen to this show are some of the hardest working in America, so you should never have to choose between comfort and durability when it comes to your work boots. That's why I'm so glad I found Brunt. Brunt sells tough boots that feel great from day one and are seriously comfortable right out of the box. No breaking them in, no sore feet, and they're built to perform. And Brunt believes in their products. You can wear them to work, and if they're not right for you, send them back. I love that they stand behind everything they make. Brunt was tired of the workwear brands out there cutting corners. You work too hard to be stuck in uncomfortable boots that don't hold up. So Brunt built something better. Boots that are insanely comfortable and built for any job site. For a limited time, our listeners get $10 off at Brunt when you use code SRS at checkout. Just head to bruntworkwear.com, use the code SRS, and you're good to go. And after you order, they'll ask where you heard about Brunt. Do us a favor and tell them it was from this show. All right, Keith, we're back from the break. We're getting ready to get into the night that you guys crashed and were held in captivity. But what was the name of the outfit you were running with?
As far as, well, it's on your head. Southcom Reconnaissance Systems.
Isn't that wild?
Under Plan Colombia. And when I saw your hat and it said SRS, at first, just for a second, I wasn't thinking Sean Ryan show because I was thinking back to Southcom Reconnaissance Systems. I said SRS because that's what we were. We were SRS. And so for a second, I'm like, oh no, Sean Ryan show.
I wish I was that switched on, Keith. Otherwise, I would have said yes.
Oh my God. And so when I saw it, how I don't know what you'd call it, right? But I'm sitting here doing the show with you with basically the same hat that I wore when I got captured. Kind of a little different, right?
Well, we got you one. These are
I know, thank
company
you.
only. Nobody else has them.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
I won't share it. But small community, but it really is, it kind of boogered me up a little. First, I said, did he do that for, oh, no, Sean Ryan's show. Yeah, so.
All right, Keith, let's move into it. So what was happening that night that you got
It was actually very early in the morning. So we had, as a mission commander, I'd get an intel box from the embassy for my mission of targets. We'd all meet at the airport, usually an hour and a half before we'd take off, and confer with the pilots. And, Marc, who was new, we had brought Marc into the picture to streamline our collection, right? He was an analyst in the Air Force, an intel analyst, and he also worked with our stuff in the embassy. So he was hired to help us, make a better product, essentially. So he was training to be a mission commander, because the funny thing about our bird was it's a Cessna Caravan. Everybody knows, 10-place bird or whatever, but we had one Colombian that's a host nation rider that always flew with us to see what we're doing. And people think, the Americans run a Colombia doing what they want. No, we had somebody on board that knew what we were doing, was working with us, and we didn't just go somewhere without permission and collect on targets. Up front, and breaks my heart, but CW5 retired, Tommy Janis. We're here because of Tommy, 30 years, retired Delta. Guy was in unit forever. Right seat was Tom House, who had never been a military pilot, but he'd done a lot of work in Latin America in these type of missions. And so Marc was next to me to the left, number one side of the bird, I was on the right. And the sad thing was Sergeant Alcedes Cruz was up front on his very first mission.
That was his first mission.
Young guy, wife, kids. And what's a bigger heartbreaker is he came with his buddy that morning. They thought they both were going to fly. And I said, I can't take two of you. I've only got space for one. He was super excited, his first mission, right? And he'd never come back.
Damn.
And so it breaks my heart remembering moments after the crash, the conversation. It was really bad. But to start off the mission, we get in there, show the target to the chief pilot and left seater, and then we go over what we're going to do. Take off out of Bogota, across the rocks, it's a little bit high, and then we get down the flat land and go do our mission. So we were going into a fixed base to get fuel. And right before the runway there, some rocks about, we call them small hills, about 3,500, 4,000 feet. So we had a combination, I call it shoot down engine failure. We were coming down out of 15,000 feet. We're on oxygen. And we're in a place where I used to look down and go, if we ever go down here, we're dead. We crossed it every day, but it was just mountain and stuff in no man's land. And I remember Tommy saying, 12,000. I had altimeter in the back, but I knew, so we all took our oxygen off. And I hear the birds, doo, no motor. So I said, Tommy, what was that? He goes, that's an engine failure, sir. Cool, calm, collected, like nothing's going on. So they start trying to do a restart on the motor. And I hear Tommy tell Tom in the right seat, run the numbers. He wanted to know if there'd have been no hills in front of us, no small mountains, we could have glided in. It would have been a non-event. Tommy had already suffered a similar event off the coast of Colombia a year before and brought the aircraft back like it was nothing and landed at an airport on the coast. So I tell Marc, make the Mayday call. And I remember telling Tommy, I don't know why I did it, but just his comedy. I said, Tommy, do some of that pilot shit, please. Just wait. So Tom in the right seat, the numbers were not adding up. And Tommy just said, fuck it, which he did the right thing. He looked and saw a valley next to us, and he just broke, and we started circling. And he was just burning off speed. And essentially what he did is he'd burn off airspeed until we actually crashed going uphill to slow the aircraft down. I cannot tell you. I mean, unbelievable piloting skills. And he was inducted last year. I come up here into the Army Aviation Hall of Fame. Well-deserved. I'm here only because of his piloting skills. We should be dead right there on that.
Damn.
So I tell Marc, I said, Marc, make the Mayday call. Marc steps on the foot mic and his voice cracks. I said, give me the mic. You get the target stuff. So Marc starts organizing what's on there. I start making the Mayday. So our boys in Key West and the boys in Embassy, I'm on the SATCOM. Everybody in the world's listening to us, right? And a friend of ours was in the office that morning in the Embassy, and he gets on and he's upset. All I'm doing is just giving grid coordinates as we go down so they can find us. I told them how many souls were on board, just the standard stuff that you train to do. Mm-hmm. And I don't think any of us, I know Tommy Janis was really scared when we were going down because we were just focused on securing stuff and Marc's securing stuff in the aircraft, so it just doesn't kill us when we crash in. But I remember Sergeant Cruz, he couldn't speak English, he's right in front of me. So I explained to him as best I could what was happening. I strapped him in the seat. He was upset. You could tell he was upset. What we did not know was that there was a column of guerrillas, and they were on the mountainside right under us. They were there waiting for aircraft on approach, trying to shoot them down.
Shit.
We didn't know. We did not know at that moment that our aircraft was getting filled with holes because the adrenaline's going right. We're just doing what we have to do. They're shooting the hell out of us right then. We didn't even know it.
Now, did you guys have any type of a quick reactionary force ready to come get you?
Yeah, they did. They had at the base, they had the spray reaction force. They had those guys, but no, we were in Indian country on our own. There was no QRF for us at all. And I remember Tommy saying, as we're, now I'm looking at jungle side above us, but he's just burned off airspeed. And Tom he said, you better put it down because about 15 foot in front of the aircraft was about a 400-foot cliff. That's how close we came to the edge of the cliff. So Tommy goes, hey guys, this is going to hurt. Then we hit first, broke off a landing gear, then we dug in. What I remember most is the side of the aircraft just opened up like just a can opener. Debris and dirt and everything are coming in. And we come to a stop. Marc and I are yelling at Tom and Tommy up there. We didn't know they were unconscious. Sergeant Cruz was okay. So behind me is a cargo door. So I said, Marc, you get the gun bag, get the target deck, right? And I'll get the pilots. So Cruz and I jumped out to get to the pilots. And the first thing I saw on the right-hand side, and I thought Thomas House was dead. The whole flap of his forehead was cut open and covering his eye. And he was out of his straps and twisted up in the windshield of the aircraft. So I start pounding on the windscreen. He's not moving. I said, I thought his neck was broken. I said, he's dead. He's fucking dead. I see Tommy next door, right, start moving. So we run around to that side and get the door open. And Tommy, how do you describe Tommy Janis, man? 56, probably weighed a $160, $156, ran 6 to 10 miles a day, had a six-pack, as vain could be, man, had his hair all blonde. I mean, Tommy was, but vain in a healthy way. Tommy Janis was a character and a half, and he's a product of his community. He fits in there. And we get Tommy out. He stands right there. I said, Tommy, fuck, man, thank you. Like, you just saved us, right? He just does like this. Then we hear him gunfire coming at us, right? He just puts his hands to his hair like this. He goes, how do I look?
No way.
I swear to God on my life. Then he reaches over and he always flew with polo socks over his danners. He straightens the sock up. He goes, how do I look? He jumps up and down. I said, you look fucking awesome.
Holy shit.
That's Tom Janis.
Damn.
Like if you want to write a movie about a guy that flew, was, a unit guy for years, and that was Tom Janis. That's why he's in the Aviation Hall of Fame. It's not by flipping accident, right? Who else does that shit at that moment? So Marc gets around and Tom comes up and Tom gets out. Tom's alive. Marc gives me just the gum bag of my M4, and we had our Berettas. I threw that fucker over the cliff. And Sergeant Cruz was getting mad at me. He's like, shoot, because there's like 60 or 70 guerrillas coming up the hill. I said, fuck, no, we're not shooting. We ain't dying today. We're not dying here. And we can't, we were uncovered ground. They were coming. There's nothing. It was over. Game was over. And Cruz is crying. But not out of like being, and I don't want to disrespect him, but he was crying out of frustration. He wanted to fight and he knew we couldn't. And he says, tell him I'm an American. Tell him I'm an American. I said, we will, but they know who you are, right? And the scary thing is Marc looks Latin. And at first they thought Marc was a Colombian too. So I turn around and then there's a couple guys in our face with AKs in our face.
It happened that quick.
Yeah. Oh, they were on top. We crashed right in the middle of about 100 and some odd guerrillas. The guys that were shooting at us, we crashed in the middle of them.
Holy shit, man.
So they split us up, right? And they took Marc and Tom and I down the hill first. And they took Sergeant Cruz and Tommy in another direction. That's what they do. They split you up so if a QRF or somebody gets there, they don't get all their golden eggs. And I'll never forget, I remember this. I looked over and I see Tom Janis dragging his right leg like he can't walk. He's got serious SEER training. He all knows one thing. That first 30 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever, if there's ever a time to pop smoke, you're going to escape. He had a plan. I knew it would end up getting him killed, but there was nothing wrong with his leg. My theory is this. Tommy was dragging his leg, trying to give distance between a group of guerrillas and just the two guerrillas that were with him, trying to buy himself time. That's what he was doing. Tommy's he was at a different level. And so we never heard the gunshots. But what we would later discover, Tommy popped smoke, they shot him in the base of the head and the shoulder. Cruz turned around, they shot him in the chest and through the hands and into the chest and killed them both. And we wouldn't find that out for months. So they take us down a hill to another side.
Hold on, let's rewind.
Okay.
You speak Spanish?
Sí, mucho.
So what were they saying when they...
Here's the problem. I didn't speak Spanish then. I learned it in captivity.
Shit.
So, but I watched Tommy. Tommy, once they separate him, Tommy's already planning, hey, I'm out. They take us down a hill to like a shack and there's a couple lemon trees and they strip us to search us and they make us flipping lemonade. A big bowl of lemonade for us, for everybody to drink. And we're sitting there in our underwear on the side of a hill, right? And I look up the hill and there's a girl who was leading the group who would later be killed. I've never seen a woman as physically capable as this woman leading a guerrilla group. If there was ever going to be a woman that, and people may not want to hear this, but if she legitimately wants to pass the Ranger course, this one will do it. There'll be no pushback on her. She was a physical freak and had been leading guerrilla columns for years in her early 30s and a killer. She was a fucking killer. We'd find out about it later. But we get dressed, we're finishing up lemonade, and all of a sudden you can hear wop, 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 wop. Here come the Hueys. They're coming to the crash site. And so she took an RPG and shot it through the bottom of the fuselage after they got all the stuff off of it. When the Hueys got there, there was two, but one was like in trail. One got there, starts circling us, right? But they can't shoot the guerrilla because the guerrilla grabbed up around